Well, welcome to another edition of Fork in the Road, where we talk to the leaders in sports, business, and entertainment. Talk about their resilience, their journeys, and ultimately their fork in the road. Now, if there's a man that has got one of the great all-time resumes, I know he's a very humble man. I've met him several times, worked with him on Triple M footy. But how's this for a resume, if you don't mind? You've got a three-time Premiership player, Brownlow medal, Norm Smith medal, All-Australian, won his club best and fairest three times, captained the Lions. There's not much he hasn't done. He got inducted into the Australian Football Hall of Fame. But then there was the one that really sparked my interest, Blackie. If you didn't have enough honours already, how did you get into the Western Australian Football of Fame and you only played 2 games for East Fremantle?
G'day, Corey. Nice to be with you, mate. Yeah, look, I classify myself as a West Australian. Although I was born in Mount Isa, Queensland, mate. I moved to Perth at probably the age of 1, I think, and grew up all my adolescence in WA, and obviously came to Brisbane with the Lions when I was 18. So, they were my formative years in WA. And as I said, mate, after all these years, I still classify myself as a sand groper.
Yeah, you are now. You've, I suppose, in recent times, we've all had experience of isolation, but having the isolation, what prepared when you went into Survivor? What doesn't prepare you when you go into Survivor?
Well, Survivor was an amazing experience, mate. I had an absolute ball. One of the best things I've ever done in my life. Very, very, challenging in terms of the lack of food and the poor quality sleep and what that does to your mentality. After a while, really put you in a pretty lot of discomfort and a really challenging spot mentally. But look, I remember when I flew to Fiji and all the lead up was really exciting. I got there and we had sort of 2 or 3 days before the game kicked off. And I remember one night before bed just having this almost like, oh wow, this is getting really real. This is actually really happening tomorrow. Am I prepared? Am I ready physically and mentally? And am I actually going to be up for the challenge of this? Am I going to break down on national TV and make a goose of myself, or how's this all going to play out? So, but I guess my football experience and my sporting journey over the years, I think, really helped. One thing with Survivor, I guess it's a real individual thing, but it's a real team versus team element, like football as well. And that was something I really loved, and trying to build a bit of camaraderie. And I guess my strategy was, not that you saw a whole lot of me on the show, it didn't get a lot of airtime in terms of chatting, mate, but was just to build genuine relationships and try to do what I said I was going to do and build some trust and things. But to answer your question, mate, it was an amazing experience, and I'll do it again tomorrow.
Was that probably the hardest thing, Blackie? That I'd imagine that when you play as many games as football as what you did and perform at the level that you did, was the hardest part not having access to food, because we're so you're so ingrained that you're looking after yourself from a physical point of view that you always got access to food. We know about all the other side about building. You've been a part of a great organisation in the Brisbane Lions, but that individual thing of not having access to food, was that one of the toughest parts?
Yeah, no doubt, absolutely, no doubt. We had lived off rations of rice and beans, and I remember having a little bit of a panic attack about day 4, day 5. Mate, where I was starting to feel really depleted at that stage. Hadn't had any protein. We couldn't, for whatever reason, cook our beans. We kept burning them, or they were just a mash. And anyways, I felt like the weight was just starting to drop off really quickly. And I'm thinking, man, how am I going to get to day 20, let alone day 40 or 50, if I can survive that long? And but it's amazing. You mentally and physically, I think you drop your weight really quickly, and then you sort of plateau for quite a while, and then you have a bit of a slow decline thereafter. And that's quite common, I believe, with people's experiences. So they have a bit of an anxiety attack, I guess, or a bit of an overwhelming, really emotional period they go through, thinking, how am I going to survive? And what I learned was that just get through the next hour, and then get through the one after that, and then also have some of my own away time from the group, from camp, just to sort of collect my thoughts and things. And when you're in an alliance, which obviously Survivor is, it's a numbers game. You really can get caught up if a group that's in your alliance might be walking down the beach with a non-alliance member of yours or whatever, and you can really play with your mind and things. So you've got to be really strong and have real belief that what you're doing is the best, I guess, strategy for you the time, and you can't influence others totally. So, yeah, it's a real mind game, that's for sure, mate.
And speaking of the mind game, I mean, I suppose you've been in the unique situation that, yeah, you were on Survivor and you had to endure, I mean, those sorts of hardships, but then your football career, any advice out there for people in the current environment about how you can probably thrive through a tough situation? I know you mentioned a couple of things then about getting through on Survivor, but what would be some of the things that you'd suggest that have really helped you in tough times? And I know there's a lot of people that probably would be doing it tough at the moment.
Yeah, look, I mean, my dad was fantastic to me, Corey. He taught me the importance of goal setting as a young guy and just having a bit of purpose and direction. And I guess what I learned throughout my footy experience, and I did a little athletics as a young guy too, and that helped a lot as well, is having some small goals and having some small wins along the way. And I guess they're the moments to give yourself a bit of a pat on the back. And for me, to give you an example, when I came to Brisbane and I wanted to be an inside midfielder, and I was sort of wanted to compare myself. I wanted to be Michael Voss, and I was never going to be Vossy. He was a freak, but he sort of, I guess for me, I got myself in a bit of a mental hole because I wanted to be a regular AFL footballer, and I wanted to be strong and put size and muscle on and all that. And I was actually improving over about a 12 or 18 month period, but I didn't really have those moments to stop and say, you know what, mate, you've actually improved, stronger in the gym. You've put on 3 or 4 kilos through hard work, and all those little things that I needed to, I guess, stop and collect myself and just reflect and think, you actually are improving a lot in the last 6 months or the last month, for instance, and have those little moments of little wins along the way, because as we know, those big grand goals, they take a long time to achieve. And, if you're not having the moments of nourishment along the way, however small they are, then you can be a little bit beaten, I think, mentally over the course of the journey.
Yeah. And then, yeah, as you mentioned before, you started off a Queenslander, went to Perth, and then what was it like when you came back to the I suppose home state, even though you consider yourself a sandgrabber?
Yeah, it was bizarre. I mean, I don't think I'd been back to Queensland since I was 1 or 18 months old when I left in the first time. So yeah, it was really strange. I was really wanted to stay in Perth, and I was a big West Coast Eagles fan and was hoping of getting drafted to them. So it was a big mixed emotions on draft day. Fulfilling a dream to get into the AFL system was amazing, but to leave home as an 18-year-old, and I was pretty well looked after at home, I must admit. So that was but it was the best thing for me to get out of Perth and stand on my own 2 feet. And that first 12 or 18 months in Brisbane was, I probably matured more than I ever have in my life, just by things like getting lost in a city and, having to learn to cook and clean and look after yourself, and the responsibility that comes with just, being an adult. And it's sort of forced upon me. But however, as well, I mean, I was so lucky as you experienced as well. When you go to a footy club, you're so well looked after. You got all these guys that are your mates all of a sudden, and that camaraderie and brotherhood that's formed. I was very lucky as well to have that when I moved into state. Yeah.
And then with Lee Matthews coming to the footy club, what was the biggest change in mindset that Lethal brought to the table? Because obviously he came in that first year and there's a lot of immediate success. What was the biggest change that you could see that when Lethal came in the front door, that you got the great Lee Matthews comes in? For those that don't know from the outside, what was the biggest thing that you noticed that he brought to the table?
Yeah, Corey, good question, mate. He always used the term, we're in the business of giving hope and selling hope. And I think that was a bit of his coaching mantra a little bit, to be honest. And he certainly gave that to us. When he walked in the door, he straight up made some changes to the playing group, to the off-field staff as well. He sort of did a bit of a clean out there. And he just had enormous ability to create hope and belief in us. It was a bit of a, the year before we came dead last, lost a bunch of, we came dead last one, I think we won 3 or 4 games for the whole year. And so I had a lot of injuries, and guys like myself and maybe Lukey Power and Shane O'Brien, a couple of others, we probably played before we were ready to play because of all the senior players' injuries. And then Lee turned up, and then a lot of those older players came back into the side. And but he just had, he's standing in the game. What he'd done in the game, he's respected within the football industry, and having him in your corner in the coach's box and when he'd address you, it just gave us enormous belief. And that was, I still remember the moments, and big finals. He'd come out at half time or three-quarter time, and he, just his words and his great ability to be able to simplify a message and just create that confidence in the playing group, irrespective of where we're on the scoreboard, was invaluable to our group, mate. It was just a privilege to play under a guy like Lee Matthews, that's for sure.
Yeah. And on the back of that, I'm just the other bit that I'm curious as well. What was it that made the Lions culture so great? You obviously had a lot of great players that drove it, but given all the vast array of different personalities, what made it so special at that time?
Yeah, Lee's first year, we went from last the year before, and then Lee turned up. We lost to you guys, as you well remember, your premiership year in '99 in that prelim. So it was a massive turnaround for us. And then 2000, we made the finals again. I think we won one final, knocked out the second week. And then Lee's third year, it wasn't until his third year that we, in fact, the first 2 months of his third year, we were a bit clunky. We still really couldn't get much going. And there's a game that gets spoken about a lot, and two of them actually, a Carlton game at Optus, and we got belted. He kept us in the sheds for a long time after it, and he went through individuals within the group, and he basically, to sum it up, said, we've got guys here, defenders that won't defend first. We've got midfielders only unaccountable, only concerned about getting the footy, and forwards that are only concerned about kicking a goal. There's no defensive bone in their body. And he teed off. I remember him saying to one player, he said, "Mate, you're okay at the Gabba. You're not bad. You're all right. But as soon as you get on an aeroplane, mate, you're bloody hopeless. You give us nothing. So you got to learn to be able to travel away and all these little things." Anyway, but his theme was around, you've got to be willing to know, accept, and perform your role. He said, until you're willing to do that, I don't know how good you blokes can be, but you're not going to fulfill your capabilities as a group. And a couple of weeks later, we went up and we played Essendon back at home, and they were the reigning premiers, had only lost, I think, once in 12 months, and they were a really special team at that time. And Lee just, his little hook that he got in the night before the game in our team meeting, he put each pairing of the lineup up there, and he put how many games the Essendon players had played versus us. And even though they were such a gun side, and he said, "Boys, you've actually been out there more. You've got more experience. Have the faith and belief that you're good enough to beat these guys." And he rattled out that Predator movie line, "If it bleeds, you can kill it." And anyway, away we went, managed to win that night. And I guess to get to the nuts and bolts of it, mate, is what changed is that I think the players really started the shift in the leadership went from the coaching group to the players, and we were really hard on each other, and the standards and what was acceptable behavioural wise, probably on and off the field, really started to change. And until that time, we weren't really going to improve as a group, and the ownership of the playing group really stepped up, and that was the difference in the end, I feel.
And the other one, mate, I've always been curious about is Phil Jauncey had categories of personalities that described all the players. Now, for those that I remember reading this from the outside at the time, and I was actually intrigued by it, but which one were you? There were all these different categories that if you just tell everyone, go into described everyone the different types of personalities that the Lions got broken down into. Yeah,
it was brilliant actually, mate. So the four categories, and you're a combination generally of two of them, was thinker, feeler, Mozzie, enforcer. And Mozzie is your bubbly, chit chatty sort of type of personality. Your enforcers, that strong, aggressive, I guess, dominant nature. Thinker is as it sounds, and feeler, I guess, is as it sounds. And for me, I was, and when I did the personality profiling, as in, did the test for it. He said, you got to think your mindset when you're playing football. And I was a Mozzie enforcer. So I used to sort of imagine when I was playing, talk a lot and chit chat, and just being really, I guess, really aggressive was my thing. And some guys were thinker and feelers, and it was really valuable for us because we'd learn about different personalities, and some guys would like to be talked to pre-game and have jokes and laugh, and some guys would like to sit in the corner and listen to music or read or whatever it might be. And I guess it just allowed us to know what worked for each other, and we had respect for if this guy didn't like, being involved in jokes pre-game or whatever it is, then we'd leave him alone. And even when as far as Phil was really clever, that when the draft time went through, he'd do this survey with all the players when the Lions would interview them. He'd get them to do it. And the night before a game, we'd look at, say, Essendon and have their players there, and Phil would talk through which ones you should talk to, which ones should talk to in a certain way, which ones you should leave alone, or maybe talk to a teammate about that particular guy, and just to sort of get in his head and rattle him. And it was really, I guess, high level skill to be able to have a great thing in your back pocket to be able to pull out. I know a lot of the guys sort of would use it from time to time and just start niggle and just to distract other opponents from their game.
When you actually describe it now, Blackie, that type of personality profiling was so far ahead of its time that when you look back at it, like even now, it probably does compare a little bit to Richmond and what they're doing off the field. I know they've got Emma Murray that looks after all their off-field and how they go about it. But there are a lot of parallels there between the two teams about knowing your teammate and knowing how you can treat them.
Yeah, exactly. We're all different. We all function different ways, and it's just been able to get an in-depth understanding of, and also I guess that the football element's one thing, but also just getting to know them away from the footy club and how they may tick, and it can be a real conversation starter for guys as well. So it was an invaluable. I couldn't really understate just how important it was for us at the time, and how much we all bought into it as a group at the time. I remember every Friday night before the game the next day, Phil would be up there speaking through it, or Lee himself would talk about the opposition and who would sort of try to attack mentally and that sort of thing. So it was really high level stuff.
Now, see if you can cast your memory back. I've got two questions that spring to mind straight away with those personalities. Number one, what was Acker?
Acker was... He was Acker?
Of all four?
I reckon he was a bit of a blend, mate. I do. He was a complicated individual. No, he definitely got a lot of thinker about him. But I think when he played, he had to be in that Mozzie mode. He needed to buzz around, and yeah, that was important for his game. Yeah,
and that's what I've always found intriguing about when you see the Lions from the outside. Like when you see guys like Jonathan Brown and Vossi and Lynchy, these sorts of guys, real big, strong characters. Was it a case of that's where that personality profiling come to a fore, that they would go, hang on, we know that's Acker and we let him do his thing? Was that the way that evolved?
100%, yeah. It was massive. It was like I said earlier, it was invaluable just to be able to have that respect for each other. Yep, okay, I might not naturally gel with someone or whatever it may be, but if I can understand them, I'm a better chance more of respecting them. And that was a big part of our ability to work together with teammates. And we certainly had our conflicts and friction at times within the group, but we had respect that was there, and we knew what each person would give us on game day too. So, that respect level, which Lee, I must say, drove that enormously well for us throughout that time. Yeah,
and take us into that feeling. What's it been like so far in the zone that you had 39 touches and win the Norm Smith? Now, I know Paige is someone that helps me out that's on this Zoom. She's in the background. I know she's a very proud Collingwood supporter that doesn't like me saying that, but what was it like on grand final day to be that in the zone? Because I think to this day, it's still the most amount of possessions on grand final day ever, isn't it?
Oh, it was a great day to be a part of. It was how I felt. I felt one of those special days where you feel in the zone, mate, and things are sort of moving at a pace that you're comfortable with, and my nervous energy. I find that was a big one. I used to get really nervous pre-game. And I remember running out there, and experience obviously is invaluable. I had, I had 2 years before of running out on grand final day, so that really helped, I guess, settle my nerves. But I just felt like I was playing in the backyard. It was one of those days I just felt really at peace and saw the game and saw what was going around me really, really comfortably, I guess, mate. Yeah, and I just wanted the game to go on forever. That's the other thing I felt. I just wanted to keep playing and didn't feel tired. It was just a really special day. And I guess for us, it's the most we've ever enjoyed a game of footy, because we probably knew we were going to win from a fair way out from the finish line. So you could really have a bit of enjoy the moment a bit more. So, yeah, Paige, I'm sorry about that day for you, but it was a pretty good one for us.
This episode is brought to you by National Make Good Solutions, experts in taking your commercial property back to the day it was built at the end of your lease. I know Grand Final Day is not far away, and we'll talk about the fact that it's in Queensland. But try and explain to everyone, even though you did it 4 times, where you run out on the mighty MCG in front of 100,000 people, just try and explain to people what it is actually like when you first run up that race, because it is one of the most special feelings you'll ever have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to put into words, isn't it? I mean, children get born. That's hard to describe, put into words. Winning the grand final is that, and then running out there. I mean, it's the most. I guess I felt like you could have felt like being, I guess, a gladiator. Might sound a bit silly, but massive crowd, massive occasion. The opposition want to do everything they can to fight. That's the ultimate prize in our sport. The opposition's going to give it everything they've got, and you're the same. And so it's the most, I guess, you ever feel alive. My first year in 01 against Essendon, I was probably a little bit overawed, to be honest, a little bit, starstruck by the occasion. It's like floating when you run out there, isn't it, mate? It's hard to describe.
Yeah. No, it is a pretty special feeling. Now, look, onto Queensland footy. Look, for my short time that I've been up here, I suppose you and I both know that the size of Queensland, we've known how big Queensland footy, how big it is up in Queensland. I think that's the biggest thing that hit me between the eyes when you come on from Victoria. But can you ever have imagined in your wildest dreams, when you cast your mind back to those late 90s and the Lions and what was going on, how awesome is it to see the game where it is in Queensland right now?
Oh, it's hard to believe, really. I mean, it's quite surreal. What's happened here this year with just the football mania and the hubs and all the games that have been played up here is one thing, but then to get the extension and play the biggest showpiece, that grand final here, it's surreal. It's hard to believe. It's amazing. It's just so good. I mean, our game up here in the developing market, it's a generational thing for mine. I mean, I've seen the game grow so much in the 20 years I've been here, and the participation numbers and all that. And I just heard Gil McLaughlin 2 days ago say that the viewership rates in Queensland have gone up, I think, 40% this year for television viewership, which is brilliant. It coincides with a pretty good time. The Broncos are struggling, and the Queensland Reds and rugby probably haven't had a great period as well. So it's brilliant. I mean, like I said, it probably takes one generation to the next in terms of mums and dads who haven't been AFL followers. They might get an interest in it, and then I guess get their children to start playing it, and then who knows from there, the generation after them, it flows on. So I don't think you can understate how big it is to get the last few months of saturation of football in South East Queensland. Yep, we haven't necessarily filled up the Gabba and Metricon with massive crowds, but just the general talk in the community about it to people that aren't football people, AFL people, has been massive. And it's only going to grow, obviously, on the back of the grand final.
Now, Blackie, you've probably got as good a resume as anyone going around in the game, but being made the ambassador of the Premiership Cup in the year where football is dominated in Queensland, is it going to be up there with as big an honour you've ever received? Yeah,
it's pretty special, mate. It is. I'm pretty humbled by it. It's a tremendous honour. And I'm just so proud. Yeah. I mean, as you said, like to be able to have be a part of the grand final in not 1,000 years we'll expect it to ever be the grand final at the Gabba, and to be able to take the Premiership Cup out into the ground. I'm going to have goosebumps. I'll have chills running through my body.
I've got goosebumps now.
I want to pull the boots on, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm just incredibly humbled, mate. It is. I'll get to take the cup up to Cairns and do a bit of a tour and show it off to a few different places in Queensland as well. So it's something I'm tremendously proud of.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. You stop and think of the enormity of this, Blackie, that it's the first grand final outside of Victoria, the first night grand final. It's in front of your home deck. I think that feeling when you walk onto the turf and then they welcome the Premiership Cup ambassador, Simon Black, I think it'll be the closest thing to you nearly running out on grand final day when you hear that roar.
Yeah, well, I haven't really thought about it like that, mate. But
Well,
yeah.
I'm good. I've phrased it. I've already thought about it for you.
You have. You've nailed it, mate. That's got my goosebumps going. Yeah. Oh, gee, exactly right. I mean, first grand final at night as well. Yeah, on that ground that I've running a number of kilometres over the years on that ground, obviously, and yeah, I love the Gabba. So it's going to be hard to describe into words, mate. It's going to be one of the highlights of my life.
And just finally, before I get to our big question, which is we ask everyone about their fork in the road moment, what about your old team? What do the Brisbane Lions have to do to win the Premiership? I sort of half know the answer because I may have seen somewhere in the media what you'd said, but what does your old team need to do to win the grand final, and who's your pick in the grand final if everything goes to plan?
Yeah, look, I mean, to answer that one first, the grand final, I think Richmond are sort of prime. They've got a great ability, haven't they, to build their season, and they seem to be doing that now. Yep. Defensively, they're great. So, I mean, that'd probably be my tip at the moment. But my side, the Lions, look, it's not a 15 game straight. We haven't beaten them, which has been spoken about a lot. It's not a monkey on the back. It's a big grizzly bear on the thermometer of the footy club. But part of me thinks that we can win them. We can beat them. They obviously need to kick straight, need to take their opportunities, which they haven't the last couple of times. 17 behind they've kicked, which is probably a reflection from the pressure that Richmond put on them. But they need things to go their way. I mean, I think you alluded to. I've said that the two key forwards need to stand up. I've seen it with you and your old mate Duck, Carey. I've seen it with Lynch and Jonathan Brown and Bradshaw. You need your big key forwards contributing to the scoreboard in big finals, and that's probably what the boys just haven't quite been able to do consistently enough at this point. They've been relying on their small forwards a lot, but what they have been doing well, McStay and Hipwood, is they bring the ball to ground quite well, and that brings the smalls into play. And I don't want to put too much pressure on them. That they have been doing that quite well, but they also need a scoreboard contribution too. So. Yeah, that's how I feel. They need to defend well because we know Richmond. I think if they can find a way to beat Richmond Friday night, there's this. It just opens up a whole lot of confidence for the side. They're playing at home. They play all their finals at home. There's no better opportunity in the history for the Lions to do it. Now's their time. They just got to find a way to get it done.
Yeah, and yes, I do tend to agree with you. If they take their chances early and put scoreboard pressure on, I think it'll give them a huge shot. Now, Blackie, we always ask everyone that comes on here, we ask them about what is your fork in the road moment in your career or life where things basically could have gone one direction or the other, and ultimately I imagine it was something positive in your life that led to something bigger and better. So what was your fork in the road moment?
Yeah, I guess one thing I haven't really spoken about much over the years was I was quite young in grade 9. I was a bit of a little bugger doing a few things I shouldn't have done, and mum and dad weren't real happy with me. And they sent me to a different school, and it coincided with the time I had Schulman's disease in my spine, and I couldn't play sport for about just a bit over 12 months. And I love my footy, and so I was about, sort of 15, 16, and there was a state side for football that I was hoping to get into, and I couldn't play because of I think I said I had Schulman's disease and my spine was really sore. So for me, I just thought I thought sport was something I wasn't going to be able to do in that time, like for the rest of my life, but certainly at a high level. And I was just really a bit disillusioned, and I was really flat. And that was the time I was probably really mean to my parents, and I was real sort of time of maturity or immaturity really. And I learned a lot about myself, and I guess I thank God that I came healthy again, and I found a way to get back being active and playing sport again. And but during that time, I've been out of playing sport and been very inactive. It built a real, I guess, a bit of resilience, or just a desire to give it a red hot crack when I came healthy again. And for me, that was to get drafted. And I spent about I guess it's probably 18 months to 2 years. I got a sprint coach because I never had much leg speed. I bought a gym membership and was really strong in trying to build my body up and all these sort of things. And it was a real time of I had to learn a bit of resilience to work through just not being able to do what I wanted to do in that 12 or 18 months. And that really was a hard time mentally for me. So when I look back, I guess I just think it was a period that I had to go through to appreciate probably being able to play sport and appreciate I was reasonably, I don't sound for myself, but reasonably talented as a kid, but it was going to be hard work, to fulfill the dream. And for me, I was never a big guy, never a quick guy, never strong, overly strong compared to a lot of players in the AFL. So I learned I had to work hard. I just had to make sure I used my strength of my longer running ability. I had to be really clean with the ball because I wasn't quick. So when I got it, it meant I didn't have a lot of time before someone be on me. I had to read the game quite well to get to positions to react first and all those sort of things. So I really studied the game a lot when I wasn't playing, and it was a real period of just I guess self-reflection. Even as a 16-year-old, I was quite young, but I sort of learned a lot about myself and throughout that period.
It is, Blackie. Like when you hear, tell that entire story, you've nearly summed up all the things that end up making you a great player, and being able to read the play and using the ball and being clean, all those things that many years later became absolute hallmarks of your game. Now, it's been a privilege to actually sit down with you, and I just was actually reading or doing some research before I did this interview, and I don't think this probably comes as any high accolade when Jonathan Brown said, he goes, if he was in the trenches, he'd choose to be in the trenches with Simon Black. And I think also the thing that people love about you, and even in the times when I've actually met you, you won't meet as humble a person as Simon Black, and it was fantastic last year that you got inducted into the AFL Hall of Fame. And I do thank you too, because I actually did get to do Triple M footy whilst you were in the jungle. So I did have to thank you again for that too.
Nah, good on you, mate. I feel I enjoyed that. We had a lot of fun together on the Triple M. It was great. Yeah, mate, the game was very, very good to me. I feel incredibly fortunate to have been drafted to Brisbane, got the opportunity to play AFL footy, and I had a wonderful family of support throughout my adolescent years, and great coaching group, as I said at the Lions earlier, and great playing group. And the game was very good to me, mate, and my body was very good to me. And you learn to I guess enjoy the journey. I feel very fortunate for the success I had, because if I ended up at drafted at Fremantle, I wouldn't have necessarily won the premierships that we had. And as Lee used to say to us, he said, guys, and this is why his whole thing was about buying into the team cause. He said, if you submit yourself to the team, on the back of team success, your individual reputation gets enhanced. And he used to say it all the time to us. And I just feel very fortunate that, I ended up at the Lions and part of that playing group.
And look, just a big thank you on behalf of everyone that tunes in. And it's another episode of Fork in the Road, and we'll see you next week, guys.